Hi, this is Carl Palachuk. Welcome to another SMB Community Podcast. I'm joined today by Susan Bradley, who is the patch lady over at AskWoody.com, and many other things.
Many other things.
You do all kinds of stuff, helping the
Kinds of
community
stuff.
and working with partners. And I guess I met you a long time ago.
Long time ago.
I remember, you probably don't remember. I remember when I met you, you were wearing a shirt that said, "I'm blogging this."
Oh, I do remember, yes.
SMB Nation.
Yes.
So it's been a couple of years. We'll just say that.
Yes.
So why don't you tell folks kind of who you are and what you do?
My name is Susan Bradley, as you said. I am the patch lady over at AskWoody.com. I'm also a moderator on the patchmanagement.org listserv. And I kind of consider that the fire hose of patch information. And to give a little history about how I got into patching, I'm the network administrator at my firm. I also assist clients in some technology decisions. And if you've ever been around small businesses, you know that they just about deploy anything and everything. And especially I deployed way back when a product called, many of your listeners probably know this product, may even have some still around, called Small Business Server. And I always called it the kitchen sink of platform because it had everything. So pretty soon I got to know about patching, and I'm in an industry, financial information, where I kind of have to make sure that we keep secure and we stay up to date. So every second Tuesday of the month, I would turn toward Redmond, wherever that is located, and I go, okay, what patches are coming out today? And pretty soon, this was way back in Windows 2000 era, when we didn't have all of the tools and things we have today.
Right.
And pretty soon it was like, oh my gosh, how do I get more information? How do I keep my firm secure? How do I not, rush immediately every day to get updates? Because that was back then when literally updates came out any day of the week. Now, sometimes it feels with Windows 10, we're kind of gone back to that.
Right. What's old is new again.
Yes, but it was worse then, trust me. So I then started lurking in, as we always do, find a community spot that talks about updates. And I started lurking and learning, and soon started answering questions. You first lurk a lot, and then you go, hey, I know that answer. And especially because we're in the small business range, we see all sorts of platforms and all sorts of things to update. So I soon started answering questions. And then that turned into where a gentleman by the name of Brian Livingston, who was the founder of Windows Secrets, said, hey, you sound like you know what you're talking about. How about you write on patch management for me for Windows Secrets? That evolved into where I'm now writing for AskWoody.com. So I now have we now put out spreadsheets of all the updates that come out on, and kind of try to track the side effects. We also do, like I said, I'm a moderator out on the listserv called patchmanagement.org. And I consider that kind of a fire hose. There's over, I believe we're almost up to 3,000 participants now. A lot of people lurk in the background. Feel free, if you are not aware of it, to please subscribe. You can put yourself on digest mode or web-only mode. And especially it's great for if somebody's installed an update and they see something happen. And the big thing when something happens, you never know if it's you or them. Is it Redmond? Did they do something? Is it me? Is it something unique to my environment? When that Tuesday comes around, when that patch comes around, you never know. So it's a really good starting place to say, hey, is it me or is it them?
Right.
Usually it takes about a week for Microsoft to officially come out, and especially on the big things. It takes longer than that on sometimes the more corner cases. But on the big issues, it usually takes about a week for Microsoft to acknowledge that something is wrong. And during that week, you're kind of scratching your head going, do I roll back? What do I do with this situation? Because I need to get my business running. I need to get my clients running. What do I do? What's the best way to, do I look and dig into it and see if it's an issue with the line of business vendor? Do I realize that it's Microsoft and uninstall the update and roll it back? And yes, I have a clock in my office, so if you heard that. So it's that whole, is it me? And so you have all sorts of administrators posting out there saying, hey, you know, I've seen this occur. You know, are you seeing this too? And especially lately, we've been talking about the very slow updates that occur with Windows Server 2016. And short of pulling your hair out and or upgrading to Windows 2019, is there any steps that one can do to counter that? There's also people that share best practices in patching. Also, they're talking about different ways that you can update. We're getting away from, used to be, you know, again, going back into history of back when patching started, we all used WSUS or SUS, Software Update Services, then it got named Windows Software Update Services. As we're moving to a cloud-only, cloud-first environment, we're starting to get away from having a server in the middle of our office and just pointing ourselves to Windows Update or updates. That brings in a different problem. In my personal opinion, if you install updates on that second Tuesday, you better make sure that you either have a backup system somewhere, or you have a plan B, or that you are willing to accept that you're a little bit of a beta tester. While updates are tested by Microsoft, I would be remiss if I didn't say that, the reality is the Windows ecosystem is so full of software,
Right.
so full of third-party things. There is no way that Microsoft can test. And furthermore, when they do test, they test on new equipment, they test on with fully updated drivers,
Right.
they test on clean machines. I use a term called crusty boxes. They don't test on our crusty boxes.
I wonder why they don't have virtual machines that are like the crappy 5-year-old server, the crappy 7-year-old desktop.
I think a part of it, some of it is resources. I mean, I doubt anybody in Redmond has a, let's see, what's my oldest? I literally have an old Windows 7 that's been around for probably 10 years. Part of it is it literally stays in the corner to run old line of business software that if we need to do an old tax return or something, I fire that one up. But sometimes I just keep it around to say, hey, what updates are coming out on that platform? Are there issues? So I literally keep old machines. But there's, with everything that they're doing, I don't think it's, you know what I mean? They've put that aside. You know,
Right.
We've heard in the news that they've fired a lot of testers. They've gone to a lot more automated testing. They also don't have the third-party software that we have.
Well, they've also recently sort of shifted to something I think personally they should have done 20 years ago, which is admitting that they're just not going to support all the old crap.
Yep.
Microsoft has wasted too many dollars and literally hundreds of thousands of hours trying to support crap that they just shouldn't support.
Yeah.
At some point, it's okay to tell people you need to either unplug that thing or take it off the internet.
Right. And we are how many months away from Windows 7 being exactly in that same position?
Right.
Yes. You remember all those things we used to do for Windows XP to isolate them and get them on the internet, off the internet, I should say? We're right in that same boat, guys. We are in the countdown for January of 2020 to where Server 2008 R2, aka Small Business Server 2011, Windows 7 is in that countdown. One that caught me off guard just the other day, July 9th, 2019, which means just a few days ago, SQL Server 2008 R2 hit end of life. And I went, oh, I better look around because I'm going like, I've got some line of business software that I know there's a SQL Server and I'm not sure they're off of 2008 R2 and onto the 2012 or 14.
Right.
So
I have a point of clarification. So when you talk about patches, it's not necessarily security patches. Because sometimes patches, I remember, sometimes you look through the patches and the lengthy descriptions and they'll say, oh, this is for people who have this Epson printer and this version of Excel and they're trying to run this with that graphics card and, something
so
blows up.
We've got new technology, old technology. Over here on the right-hand side, old technology is the Windows 7 era, where you had what I call the A week, the B week, the C week, and the D week. Okay. So, if you have still clients that have Office, older versions of Office, where when you go into the Windows Update history, you see Office 2013, Office 2016, Office 2010. You see individual updates. That's the old school technology. And that's where, yes, you'll see, especially on the first week of the month, you get the non-security updates for what's called Office MSI, the old-fashioned installer. And you'll get those time support for Turkmenistan, and you're going like, I don't live there.
Right. I don't really need
talk
that.
to those people. I don't want to go there. Why do I need that update? So you have the ability to say, I don't need that because it doesn't apply to me. Windows 7 is still on that same format where you get a either security-only update or a roll-up update where the security and the fixes, the bug fixes, are all rolled up in the same thing. So you choose one or the other. Now, they've gone to, because you remember Windows 7 got so bogged down in scanning for updates that you would like start your Windows update process, go to dinner, take somebody out on a date, go to a movie, take the weekend, come back, and it still had not finished scanning for updates.
Right.
Because when it's trying to sense for supersedence, it goes through and go, ooh, that's old, I don't need that. Ooh, that's old. And it's the database is so big, it's having a hard time processing that. Because of that supersedence problem, in the Windows 10 era, they said, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to make it so that you are no more than 2 updates away from being fully patched. So you can grab any machine off the rack that is even a 1607 or some older version, and within 2 updates, you're going to be fully patched. You're going to be able to jump up to a cumulative. What that does, though, is really upset a lot of people that say, hey, what if I don't want the Turkmenistan date patch and that has an issue with my situation here? You have no ability to cherry pick and say, I don't want that update. It's all or nothing. So you have to make sure you standardize more on hardware, stay away from those bizarre, older, crappy apps, get a little bit more standardized and say, hey, I'm not going to install that weird thing that always gave me troubles, that I was always reaching out to the vendor, and I was always having to tweak things, and they were always having to fix permissions or something. Anything that you have a vendor that has just driven you crazy, it's time to step back and say, hey, this guy is not ready for Windows 10.
Right. Well, a lot of these third-party apps that we have the most trouble with, it's not Intuit or big companies. It's Cousin Larry's pretty good line of business application, where the only way whoever he is, could make it work is to give everybody administrator privileges.
Yes.
And, we've moved beyond that. Even the Windows installer won't let you do that anymore. And so, unless you seriously program around it. So in some ways, I guess the world is getting better, except for the people who are absolutely forced to stay in the past for one little application that they can't get rid of. So,
and that's the thing. You've got it for any client who's sitting there going, why do I have to move from? It's the ecosystem. Think in terms of people who have gone to Android phones and iPhones in particular. The model of the iPhone, where you go to the App Store and you download something, means that iPhone is extremely secure platform. At the same time, it means that the developers have to color within the lines, and they have to make sure they read the developer SKUs and all the APIs and things like that. They have to follow lines. Windows world, we are still in a very much Wild West, where they could get away with all sorts of lovely stuff. Every single time there's been a feature update or security update, and you hear, oh, this antivirus had a problem, or oh, don't install it because there's a slowdown. You should, when you read that in the headlines, you should translate to, they've used an API they shouldn't have for many years, and finally Microsoft has done something to say, no, you can't do that anymore, and the what has hit the fan. Right.
So do you have any sense of where we are with Microsoft trying to adopt, excuse me, an Apple's type model, in the sense of, I can get some apps, I can get them as programs that I install, download and install, and I get some through the Microsoft Store, same brand, same software, 2 different installations. I'm assuming the store app is more secure and more Apple-like in that environment, because it's been built in that secure process. How close are we to making sure everything goes through the store?
We're way far away, long way. Yes.
Okay, so the Wild West is still the 18th.
We are still in the Wild West. Somebody, and this has probably been about 5 years ago, somebody said that this was a 10-year process. You probably heard the Windows 10 S, the Windows 10 S SKU out there, which everything comes in the store. Surface devices, some of the Surface brands are coming with a Windows 10 S version of it, and everything has to be downloaded from the store. And what's the first thing that most everybody who buys that model does? They go out and they buy the Pro SKU and up it so they can install whatever they want.
Oh, I thought somebody had an app that let you go around the system.
Yeah. So we are probably, I think even 5 years is being a little bit too what's the word I'm looking for? Too optimistic for seeing that. We still have so many enterprises that have to install crappy app, you name it. And I think especially down in the small business range, we're going to move our line of business apps to the cloud before we ever get to where we're doing the that Windows Store mode.
So you and I have friends who still today say, look, you don't need an RMM, you don't need a patch management, you don't need WSUS. Just run Windows updates, put them on automatic, install everything, and you're golden. So how close is that to true, or for how much of the population is that true? I would say we're close with one exception. What I do is I recommend, there's settings inside of Windows Pro. Well, first of all, let me back up. If you have anybody, your friends, neighbors, loved ones that have Windows Home, upgrade them to Windows Pro, where you do have the ability to push off updates. So the first thing I recommend is pushing off the quality updates for 15 days. And you're like, what? You don't want to immediately patch? Right now, these days, we are not being hit with 0 days. We're being hit with phishing attacks. We can actually wait. There's actually Microsoft studies out there, and people have given presentations saying that the bulk of the attacks right now are phishing attacks. Phishing attacks come through where they come through our email. They use existing, click on this. They're not really exploiting new vulnerabilities. We're not getting any new 0 days, especially down in our space. So we can wait 15 days for things to kind of settle out and then update. So what happens in those 15 days? I guarantee you that Microsoft will they'll get their feedback from their feedback loops. They will know which updates are having issues. They will sometimes pull updates. In the recent case of the July updates, there was a detection problem with Visual Studio updates. They were being pushed out to machines that didn't have the full-blown Visual Studio. They just had a certain DLL, and because the detection was faulty, they were getting pushed out to places where they shouldn't have been. In that 15-day window, Microsoft went, oops, we're hearing feedback that people are getting it and they shouldn't. Let's change the detection updates. So that gives Microsoft time to react. That gives you time to not be the guinea pig, to not be that beta tester. I also recommend pushing off the feature updates. I don't recommend being the first one to install those as well, especially in a business environment. So there's a second setting in there. It says, defer feature updates. It calls it the semi-annual channel. And how many days or months do you want to do that? You can do it up to 365 days. I think that's a bit excessive. But what you might want to do, if you do want to do it that long, I recommend doing 365 days and then putting a date on your calendar, because the feature updates come out twice a year. They come out, they're supposed to come out in March and September. By the time everything shakes out, it's sometimes April or May. Put a date in your calendar, like about June or July, to review and say, right, are they ready yet? So is that machine by machine, or can you do a group policy to make that?
You can do group policy, yep.
Oh,
group policy, Intune, local group policy, registry key. If you've got an RMM tool that only does registry keys, you can push it out through a registry key. I'll give you links.
All right.
The other thing that I recommend too is not doing every single feature update. I live in the world where I don't buy enterprise SKUs. I only buy the Pro SKU. So every feature release has an 18 18-month lifespan. So I have to install a feature update, and with 18 months, I've got to get to the next feature update. Otherwise, I'm going to be not able to be patched anymore. So think in terms of like installing a service pack, and from the day you install the service pack, you've got 18 months to get to the next service pack. So if I had enterprise SKUs, if I could afford that, I'd have 30 months.
Right.
The September release of Windows 10 has a 30-month window of support if you're in enterprise SKU. I can't afford that. I don't want to afford that. So what I do instead is, rather than doing a feature update every 6 months, I pick once a year. So I kind of wait and see, are there issues with certain ones? Are things kind of settling down to where it's getting kind of boring? So I feel comfortable with a certain version, and then I'll pick on that one, and then I go, okay, we're going to go the whole fleet on that one.
So when you look at your forum, do you do that primarily just to get a sense of like, is this a busy period? Am I going to see a lot of trouble? Or is it just to kind of keep an eye on, you know, should I be installing or should I not be installing? Because it sounds like you've got at least a 2-week window before you're going to blow up any of your machines, right?
Right.
So,
well, and in that time frame, if you don't have the resources to test, by all means, lurk out on the patchmanagement.org listserv and see what others are seeing. In my office, usually, well, what I do in my office, my home machines are my test beds. My home machines are on the Windows Update, no deferrals whatsoever. They get everything straight out from Redmond. So I see what happened on my home machines. If everything's okay, then I'll go ahead on my office machines.
and in the work environment, you use WSUS?
I'm currently WSUS. I'm debating whether or not I will pull that out. I am still of the opinion that you should have something between you and Mothership Redmond.
So and Intune doesn't count?
Intune can count.
Okay. But my question is, do you then schedule these at work, right? When you've decided you're going to do this, do you schedule them for the evening, like Friday night?
Saturday night at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Okay.
Yep.
So because I think the most frustrating thing for people on Windows 10 is, it's not that I don't want updates, it's that once they start, I have absolutely no idea how long it's going to take.
And especially the feature updates, depending on the size of the machine, the speed of the machine, those suckers can take as little as a half hour to several hours. So yeah, you have to have, so the era of Windows 7 where you're like, oh sure, hit that yellow, remind me later, and just keep hitting that remind me later, and it would come back and come back and come back. Those days are over. As I say, you have to be a patching BITCH in your office or for your clients. You have to say, okay, let's sit down. When is a good maintenance window? And I may have certain rings saying, okay, I can reboot these systems that weekend. I can reboot this weekend. I can reboot here. They may be different time frames, and you can set up different settings. Right. You have to say, we are going to reboot. You have to. So close your files, close down everything. If you have anything up, so sorry, so sad, too bad. You were warned. This
right. Well, I've always been vicious about that with my clients. Leave it on, but logged off, because I need to be able to get into it, and I need to be able to reboot it. And if you got stuff open, that's not my problem. So, right. And I have no problem with that. So here's the question, though, with you. I love the idea that I've got a couple of weeks and I don't have to panic, but does that mean I'm actually safe from viruses? Like, assuming I'm not going to click on everything that shows up, and assuming that I'm not going to especially click on some ransomware thing that says, please infect all my machines. Is it actually safe? I'm not putting it all out there.
About 30 days before things really start heating up. And you look out and you look at the big headline stuff. Have you seen anything for Spectre and Meltdown?
No, not in a long time. Like, I remember it was hot for about a week, and then it just became one slide on a slideshow.
The Blue Keep one has been, we're going to have a worm, we're going to have a worm. And you're like, okay, I don't see anything. The bad guys know that they can get in through phishing. They're not doing the direct attacks, the worms, anymore. as much as they did. Like I said, literally there's a study out there. I stumbled across it. A gentleman was doing a presentation at a security conference, and it was a Microsoft gentleman, and he said, he looked at the chart and he's like, yeah, you've got about 30 days. And I'm like, finally, validation that yes, we have time to wait. We don't have to panic. If you feel that you've got somebody who really is click happy and you cannot protect them, then I'd say make them be the first day patcher, or hand them an iPad and say, surf on this.
Right.
If you kind of risk your environment, as you say, if you know that you've got people that are a little bit hesitant on clicking on things, or they'll forward it to you and say, hey, what is this? If you've got that kind of client base, that they're a little bit paranoid, that you can say, hey, I do have time. If you've got a client base that you cannot, you're in there all the time fixing things, then I'd say, okay, you're going to have to say, you're going to have to do the updates on the first day. I don't care. I've cleaned you up so many times, this is ridiculous. So it just depends on my environment. I can wait.
Right. So how much do you think it actually helps, and just we're almost out of time, but how much do you think it actually helps to try to do end user education?
A lot.
A lot. Okay.
A lot.
Because I was just thinking, like, is that completely futile, or is it the
No, and the major thing is, even if you don't educate them on how to fully examine these phishing attacks, because sometimes I can't tell, if you empower them to say, let's forward them to you, let's send them to somebody else to look at, because I'm not sure. It's okay to not answer the phone on the first ring. It's okay to not immediately respond back on email. Relax, focus, as you would say to.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Relax, focus, succeed.
Exactly. So it's okay to not immediately call back. So evaluate that email. Don't, knee-jerk click on it. If you're not sure, forward it to somebody else, either, somebody else, the guru of the office who knows how to review those things, or the consultant. Empower your clients to forward it to you so that you can, and if you're not sure, ask on the community list saying, hey, I'm not sure, but there's so many times that we get something and you're going like, man, that was good.
Right. What's funny is if you forwarded an email to me and said, hey, can you see if this attachment has got a virus in it? I would delete it and I would send you an email and say, look, there's no way I'm ever opening that attachment. So, my advice would be you shouldn't either, right?
Yes.
Just ask them like, hey, did you send this to me? And if you did, can you send a clean copy, right?
Yeah.
So here's a question. If I get an encrypted email, like if somebody has, they go and they get the encrypted email option and there's an attachment, does that mean I'm safe in any way?
No.
I've just got an encrypted attachment inside of a.
I've had a situation where if the person I knew on the other side, they sent me an encrypted email, it was an odd email, and I'm like, when I contacted them, their system had been hacked. So they got into their profile and was able to send out the email. So yeah, just, have your little, aluminum foil hat handy, and always be a little bit on the paranoid side. If you have any questions, there's these old-fashioned things called phones. Perhaps people have heard those. Get on the phone, call the person and say, hey, did you send that to me? Don't just assume that email was actually sent by that person.
My favorite client of all time is this woman named Janet, and she was so careful about absolutely everything. I remember one time I was saying, okay, I'm going to open a remote session to your window. And she says, something just popped up on my screen. Was that you? I was like, we're literally on the phone together. So it's like, yes. And you should always ask this question, so very good. Well, thank you very much. Is there any final tips or links that you want to send folks off to?
I will send them to patchmanagement.org, and I'll send them to askwoody.com. And that's about it. Stay
very
safe.
good. Well, thank you for your time. I certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.